Hi guys, happy Tuesday. It's Rob here again with another video, and I thought it was about time I talked about a real world session that I did in March this year. And of course I've stated that this year I'm not touring with Susie or Lorena McKinnett. We're not up to anything. The bands are totally kind of put on hold for a while, as you know, the performers are taking time out, shall we say. So with nothing happening or no recording with these people, I'm left to my own devices. So I've been busy with my quartet, which I'll talk about in another video. But I've also been able to get busy again with a band that I've been involved in from the start, and that's a band called Littlemen, which I've spoken about before. There's a video which I'll probably, if I remember, I'll put a link down below to our first real world session, which was about a year ago. I think we did the album Visions. And of course, I say of course, but maybe you don't know, but Littlemen consist of myself on drums, and I produce. Nick Allen is the singer and main core songwriter. And then we have Mark Left Hand Jones on keyboards. He also helps to arrange and compose the songs with Nick. We have Zach Ware on all the guitars. We have Flash Gordon on bass, and we have the brilliant Joe Nye on vocals. And about a year ago, when Nick sort of gave me the sort of reins really and said, listen, I want you to produce the songs and move away from the sort of Americana sound that we had before, which really wasn't something that I was into. And he allowed me to sort of bring all the influences that I've got, poor bugger, into his music. And Visions demonstrates that. I think it's a nice eclectic mix of all sorts of different kind of sounds and influences. I don't want to sort of say too many to pinpoint it, but I might do when I talk about this next record. So we did that one album, Visions. We did another one called 5 Steps, which I've kind of spoken about before, but not as grand as I will Visions and this new album. And that was quite difficult because we were all busy. That was an album made, well, while everyone was out doing their thing. So we would sort of remote sessions into Nick and Phil Andrews, who's brilliant. He's our sort of engineer. You know, he would sort of piece things together. And when I was back from touring with Sue or whatever, I would go back in and record a few more drum things. And it just seemed like the album went on forever, but it's a great record. It's called 5 Steps to ... So 5 steps to whatever you think it's going to be. And that album is a lot more harder hitting, a bit more of a dance element, more heavier loops. It's kind of the next step up from Visions, I would say, which leads us to this next one, which is called I Do What I Want, which has just come out. And again, it's available on all the streaming platforms and also physical copies. And you can contact Nick at Littlemen Music at Facebook. And we do have a website, but I think even people use the Facebook, you know, as we're updating it and stuff. So, so this was recorded at Real World in March. And I'm checking here, it was the 8th and the 9th. This is another step up again, you know, from 5 Steps. And I think you have to develop, you know, bands that stay the same. That's good. Nothing wrong with that, you know. Here we go again. We're not going to try and say better or worse. But for me, it's all my favourite artists, and I don't need to mention them. You all know who they are. But they progressed. They didn't stay where they were. Even if it was detrimental to album sales and record sales, they still moved forward because they believed it was the right thing to do. And Nick Allen, as I say, the leader and the main songwriter and the lead singer, he definitely wants to keep moving all of the time. He doesn't want to stay still. And we've just been in Real World again, which I'll talk about in another video, because we've now got another album coming out. So we're working quicker than Prince and Bob Dylan and all these people. Well, certainly quicker than Prince, he's dead. But yeah, I mean, he can't stop writing, and him and Left Hand, Mark, the keyboard player, they're just writing stuff all the time together. And Nick writes to some loops as well, and then Left Hand will come in and say, right, well, that's just a loop. We can't stay to that because it's just going round and round. We'll have to add a few different things to this, and then the songs develop from there. So it's a good little system. Yeah, so that's the new album. And Mark Left Hand Jones is the artist who did that on the front. Well done, Mark. Nice bubble writing. What is that? What is that font? It's now called Left Hand Jones font. That's what it is. So yeah, so we all got together at Real World over those 2 days. Again, we were all really busy, so we had sketches of songs. We never actually played them through all together properly in one place. But, you know, the demos had been out for a while, so everyone had an idea. And I'd sent an email out saying, you know, what kind of reference tracks they should listen to and what sort of vibes I'd like on the songs. And we had the forms. They weren't going to change. We weren't suddenly going to change things around. The forms were set. We were happy with the arrangements, you know. And we just had to go in and track it over 2 days. You know, and there's always little problems here and there along the way. Certainly not at the studio. The studio was amazing, as ever. I mean, I don't have to keep waxing on about how much I love Real World. Oh, my spiritual home, darling. It's great. Yeah, so he rocked up. I mean, also invited along Ken Dewar, good friend of mine for many, many years. And he's big on the scene musically, not just as a percussionist and musician, but also, you know, he's been involved in the drum world. He's now involved in the audio world, you know, putting, you know, PA systems into venues and arenas and stadiums and touring bands and all that. He's always involved in music in some way. And he played percussion on, I believe it was the Sunday night. He brought a massive rig in with him, and I sort of gave him a few little pointers. I talked about Remain in Light, the Talking Heads album, you know, how the percussion work on that. What works and how it sounds and what kind of things we need and what we you know, we probably wouldn't need. And also Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads live film, you know, of the gig, of that tour, from the album Stop Making Sense. The way the percussionists work with the drummer in it and the rhythm section, how that all fits together. That was really a kind of idea that I had. So yeah, so I suggest you stream this. It's a really good album. Going through it, I Do What I Want is the theme tune. You know, I kind of had, for me, when I heard how poppy it was and how summery it sounded, I was thinking very much of when I used to hear songs by The Cure, like Friday I'm in Love and things like that, and that feeling I had. And, you know, sometimes you don't mind a chorus going around quite a few times because it's very hummable, very singable, very likeable. Sometimes you don't want to hear that, and that's subjective. But with this, it was kind of, you wanted to hear I do what I want, you know, to go round and round. And the sort of sounds, I was, as I say, thinking of The Cure, but I was also thinking of like late 60s, psychedelic, Laurel Canyon type vibes. So sitars and things like that coming in a, you know, nice, Zach plays a lovely acoustic, strummy acoustic guitar on it. And, you know, I love that mix of electronic instruments next to acoustic. I just love that when you get the right kind of mix, you know. I mean, you can throw everything at everything, and that's fine too. The 80s was quite good at that, for experimenting like that. And some of it is good, some of it is bad, but as I say, it's all subjective. But I really like the idea of, you know, throwing those things together. So you'll put a sitar next to some kind of weird Moog sound, you know, and see how they work together. And they should be worlds apart, but you can actually bring them together. It's like the peace and love, man. I tell you, music is good for this sort of stuff, especially we need it right now. But let's not get too political, I know. But yeah, so that was the vibe of that, and that's the single. And if you want to go and stream that song first, I would recommend it, though I'd recommend whatever mood you've got, there's going to be a track on here which suits your mood. Okay, so that's track 1. And track 2, I Didn't Want to Make You Cry. Nick loves writing those kind of ballads. And there's something, I think, and it's hard writing it's hard writing any song, but ballads are hard. And it's, you know, it's kind of tricky not to give it that dynamic thing where it goes up and then it goes back down again, and we settle and land and your emotions can come back to where you started. But you know what? That's kind of a classic thing, and certain songs need that. And when I heard this one, I mean, Left Hand and Nick had already sort of really arranged it beautifully, even before I got to it, really. I didn't really do that much. It was more the sounds in the studio that I dealt with rather than the arrangement of the song for this one anyway. So I just knew I had to have that dynamic shift. It needed to do that. It was just crying out for it. It's almost like when you hear a key change, you know, it could be a bit cheesy, but it's like, oh, so what? It's what this needs. You know, it's a cliche, but it's perfect for this song. That was kind of like that. And the lyrics are really heartfelt and really lovely about the relationship that Nick had. So you can't get any fairer than that. People always say, write about the truth, sing about the truth. People will, you know, take it on board and they will dig it. And I think you will. And then we got Billy, which is about Billy the Kid. Nick loves cowboys. He loves gunslingers, that kind of old school thing. And when I heard it, I just thought I wanted to make it into a gospel song. Again, Nick and Left Hand had been taking it into that direction, but I just wanted to go, you know, full Monty with it. So I mentioned we should get a Joe build up a choir, which actually we used on the newest, or the last session, which we'll talk about another day. We actually got a choir in, but that's for another day. Yeah, so we should get Joe, myself, left hand, Phil Andrews. You know, I don't sing very well, by the way, but I'm just good to throw in a mix, you know, in amongst the voices. I can kind of fill it out just about, like gang vocal, or whatever they call it, group vocal. So yeah, so we sort of built it like that. So as you hear it start with the piano and the rim click on the drums, and again, strummy guitar, it's got a really nice sort of mid-tempo feel. I was thinking of kind of Glenn Campbell kind of vibes, and then letting it pick up. By the time we get to the end, it turns into this huge gospel vibe and completely changes it, which is kind of at odds with the cowboy thing for various reasons, you know. But that's what I thought was cool. It was the twist in that story, which I thought was kind of fun. And, you know, drum-wise on a lot of these tracks, that they're very, you know, play the song. That's all that matters. Play the song. If I can fit something in that's tasteful and no one looks at me and goes, what? Then I'll do it. But generally, I'm not thinking like a drummer on this. I'm thinking like the producer. I don't want a drummer to be sat there hitting 7s and 8s all over the place. I just want someone, me, to do the job, but be tasteful, have the right snares. You know what I'm saying? Be tasteful about it. But not really any particular song that has the drums poke their heads out, because that's not what I want to listen to. Even from myself, oh my God, a split personality. Yeah, so I'm extremely happy with all of it, but that one, especially how that worked. Reasons is a nice little track with Nick, Joe and Zach and Left Hand on Hammond. They've got Hammond at the studio, of course. What haven't they got at Real World? And if you don't know, Real World is Peter Gabriel's recording studio in Box, which is only about, 20 minutes from my front door. And I get a lot of sessions there. But it's quite expensive because it's one of the top, it's always in the top 10 studios of the world ever, residential studios in the world. It's always in the top. I think it was number 1 last time. Beyonce's been there, Sade, Van Morrison, Robert Plant. Actually, Robert was there on this session. He popped in to say hello, which was quite nice. Everyone who's anyone. Lorena McKinnett, of course, that's where I first met Lorena, records there. Yeah, so Reasons is just, again, a nice ballad. It's beautiful, the interplay between the Hammond and the acoustic guitar, and Joe Nye's vocals, and, Zach Ware's playing, it's lovely, and Nick's voice sounds great. That was brilliant. And I remember it was on the last day, I think it was the Sunday, I sort of left the big room, which is what we hired, which is the main room, and I went to get a coffee and to chill out. And I came back and had finished it. I didn't think I needed to be there for that. Zach kind of took control of that a little bit, Zach and Nick. So it was nice just to say, right, I'm getting off the horse for a bit, let someone else have a listen. And I came back and it was great. But towards the end, as I say, there was a Hammond there. So I said to Left Hand, we were the last ones there with Nick and the Real World engineer and Phil Andrews, our engineer. And I said, let's get some Hammond on it. It's going to change everything. And we put Hammond also on Billy, the Hammond organ. I just love it. Thank you, Jimmy Smith. Thank you, John Lord. You guys made me fall in love with the Hammond organ at a very young age, thanks to my dad playing these records. And then side 2, if there was a side 2, starts with Gene Kelly. Ooh, it's hard to get. Let's go in and out of focus. About the dancer. Hence why Nick's talking about different dance moves and bits and bobs, and he loves watching those movies. I love those movies. My mum used to play them all the time, and Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. They drove me mad in a way, but as a kid, you don't want to hear that sort of music and stuff. It just sounds so old. But then you grow up and you realise it's world class and it will last forever. And all dancing that came from the early days that inspired the dancers that come after it. So there's moves they're doing that you're going to see Madonna doing, whoever else, Lady Gaga, I suppose. I don't know, whoever we talk about these days. Yeah, beautiful. So this was the one that I really, when I first heard the demo, I really wanted to, change the time, because it's got an odd time in the choruses. But what makes it work, and I was talking to Ken about this, the percussionist, earlier on today, because he heard the mix of it on Spotify and loved it. We all know about odd times. There's a video of me playing Take 5 with my quartet, which is online now if you look back on a short. And I said to the people before we started, I bet no one can dance to Take 5. And there was 2 or 3 couples, well, quite a few couples there, obviously. There was this one couple, 2 couples sat on a table, and they started dancing. The women from the group started dancing, and they danced in 5. And what was funny about it, and the video cuts off just before it changes, because I played the solo, bring it down, and John stops playing the boom, boom, ba-da, boom, boom, you know, the vamp. And then I hit a pad, and then a 4/4 sort of drum and bass thing comes in, and we sort of do the same tune, but in a drum and bass vibe, but not the head of the tune, but just go around the chords, and it gets into a really kind of underworld kind of vibe, you know, like, yeah, anyway. So I wanted this Motown snare. I play this snare, and this is why it works. So if you're trying to sometimes fit an odd time into a poppy thing, the way to do it is put that Motown snare in on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. If you keep that pumping all the way through, it doesn't matter what time signature, you know, in the quarter note time signature, it's like 5, 4, 2, 4, 3, 4, 6, 4, 7, 4. If you keep that snare going, it keeps people connected. So it's not like a genius thing, is it? It's just like, it just works. I don't know where I nicked it from, but I thought it was a good thing to do, to drive it all the way through. So it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So it's a 7. It's not a 5, it's a 7. And I just thought it was quite natty and quite funny. Some people notice it when they listen to it, and some people don't even comment. I wait for people to hear that sort of chorus section and them to go, hang on a minute, is that in a different, but they don't. So that's kind of cool. So if you can do odd times and get away with it and still keep people dancing, then that's the thing. And I guess the Remain in Light album again by Talking Heads was the thing that I said to Ken, I really want, and Stop Making Sense, actually both those things again. Hence why I said it the first time. The way they work together, it's Chris France on drums, and I can't remember the percussionist's name, it's awful. Anyway, I should remember, but the way they work together was really good. No one got in the way of the other. And on this track, Gene Kelly, no one gets in the way. And there's a lovely middle section just after when there's a drum and percussion break. And again, who has drum and percussion breaks in 2025 on sort of commercial records? Nobody. It's like people would say, that's dead air time. We need other things going on. But you know what? I said to the guys, do you mind, guys, if we do this, after that second chorus, I want to go into, you know, like an 8-bar drum break or whatever, it's 12 bars, 16 bars. I think it's 16. Let's be brave. Let Ken do the thing on congas and then a few little breaks on bongos, and we'll stitch it together. It's going to be great. And they were all one takes for these things, you know. It was just, it's all a question of mixing. That's all it all ever is, really. If the performances are good, it's about the mix after that. So, so yeah, then after that section, it was like, what is it? A guitar solo, keyboard solo, horn solo? What? And I was like, no, well, we're going to have this section, which is quite long. It's like a verse section, but I'm going to write some words out. And I wrote this really pretentious, I was going to try and find it and show you, but it was a really pretentious kind of text I'd written. I said, I'm going to read it in a sort of almost Richard Burton style way, almost over the top. So when we reverse it, which is what I want them to do, I want you to reverse it, it will sound like even weirder. So if I try to talk like this, you know, all that business, like Brian Blessed, when it comes back and it's reversed with a bit of, you know, romance on it, some sort of reverb or something on it, compression and stuff, it's going to sound really otherworldly and a bit scary, actually. And it did. And then I wanted Zach was holding this note, getting feedback. I said, just keep that going all the way through. So the voice thing was kind of a Beatles throwback, I guess, of when they used to reverse things, but it was also a Kate Bush influence. And then when I asked Zach to do this held guitar note, that was very much from a Talk Talk album, Spirit of Eden. No, Laughingstock, actually. It's track 3, I can't remember what it is, After the Flood. And there's this whole section where there's this really obnoxious sort of sound being held for absolutely ages, almost to the point where you say, that's enough, I've had enough. But in a way it's beautiful because it's almost crying out. It's annoying you, but it's crying out to be heard, you know. Getting all kind of deep now, darling. But it was that. So I wanted that section to be like a nod to Talk Talk, Kate Bush, and just a bit surreal. And then it comes back into the chorus again. And I'm just proud of the whole thing, or the whole album. But that track, the way that came together, really happy with that. Lady of the Mountain, again, I wanted it to be very bare, very sparse. Snares off on the drums, hardly any cymbal work, no hi-hat work, no shakers, nothing too high in the mix. I wanted, again, influenced by Spirit of Eden and Laughing Stock by Talk Talk, those two albums, where space is key. And Miles Davis has said this before, and I'm a huge Miles fan. You know, use the space. There's music in the space. There's music in the silence. The silence is always making up, it's almost making up music that doesn't exist between what does exist. And it's like, wow. And it's true, because sometimes you hear something not resolved correctly, or not resolved the way you think it should be, not correctly, but the way it should be, you know, and they leave that last note out. But the human brain sort of almost, even if you're not a musician, puts a resolve in there anyway. You know, it's kind of weird. And I'm fascinated by that part of the human musical brain that does that. So Lady in the Mountain is a very slow, moody track. Again, it's a little bit Kate Bush as well, I suppose. But, you know, none of these things, this is what I bring to it. I don't always tell the band, but I bring it in as a reference point as producer. I think, right, I've got an idea of where I'd like this to live. But they all, you know, all these tracks and visions, anything I produce doesn't sound like something else. That's the thing. I don't think so anyway. I would say that. But, you know, it's always well and good having a reference, but you can't make it the same, is my point. It's not to copy, you know, it's to take the influence and say, right, I need to take those elements and make it into something else. So, yeah, so there's that. So Lady in the Mountain of the Mountain is a great song. I'm really happy with what happens on that, and good lyrics from Nick. In the Garden, it's kind of our acid jazz kind of, you can almost imagine talking, Brand New Heavy's doing something like that, but the drums would be in far earlier, and there'd be horns on it and stuff. But it's that from that period, Galliano and all that kind of stuff. When you hear it now, you might not think so, but that was kind of an influence for it. Again, Nick and Left Hand had really got this song bolted together pretty well. I just knew where various bits should come in, come out. I could see the menu of the instruments, of the sounds. Again, we got some late 60s Laurel Canyon kind of sounds in there as well. Nice harmonies from obviously Joe Nye and Phil Andrews in there, and I think I'm in there as well. I'm on a few of these, but thankfully tucked well back in the mix. So don't worry, your dogs and cats won't be running for the hills, or your wine glass won't be breaking, or whatever as you're listening to it. Yeah, again, with percussion on that as well. I mean, there's percussion on a few other things. I'm not going to name every single thing. But yeah, I think that works quite nicely. In the middle, there was a breakdown section. Because I remember hearing, you know, you listen to Drop the Needle on side one of What's Going On, Marvin Gaye. The first thing is, hey, what's happening, man? How you been? Yeah, cool. Woo, yeah. What's happening? And then the song kicks in, you know, and I've always loved that sort of party element. And there's a ridiculous Beatles B-side called You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, which is a real crazy song. But anyway, yeah, and there's loads of that sort of talking. I remember hearing that when I was, 10, and thinking, why would you have people talking in the studio? That's wrong, isn't it? Anyway, so there's an element of that in this song where it breaks down. Again, you think, could it be a solo in there? Could it be this? But there's enough guitar solos and keyboard solos in the world, and when they're in the right place, I love it. But I just thought, no, in this breakdown, let's just have the drums, the percussion, and us in the studio. So we did 3 or 4 takes with just a mic in the middle of the room, and us all saying, hey, what's going on? Yeah, ooh, nice to see you. Yeah, nice jacket. Just stupid stuff. And we do 3 or 4 of those, and then you put them together, and then there's happy little things that happen in there, like little, not mistakes, but happy little accidents where people say something on the 3 takes before, and then on the 4th one, someone said something just before or after a comment was made on a different take. And it stitches together, and that one was great. The first mix, it was too low in the mix. So I said, Phil, bring it back up, because it's a silly moment. It's just fun. Hopefully it'll make people smile. And Luke Smith joined us on guitar on that one. Luke's a great player. And hopefully we'll do a bit more with Littlemen here and there. And he's a great musician and songwriter and performer in his own right. He plays drums too. God damn him. And the last one, Golden Diamonds, which is more of a dancey type track. Our influences for that were like Simple Minds. That brilliant track by Run Away, Turn Away, Turn Away. Small Town Boy, I think. Not the Communards. Who was it? It's going to come to me in a minute. Why can't I think of that? It's gone. Anyway, yeah, Small Town Boy, you know the song. Go and check it out. Brilliant song. Way ahead of its time. But the keyboards and the way it was moving and the vibe, I mean, it's a lot heavier than that. But it's that kind of feel, anyway. Maybe not the same sort of emotion in the song, but because that's a very amazing track, that. But yeah, it's a similar kind of vibe. It was in the reference point, anyway, in the reference points. And that ties up the album. And again, I think this album's very eclectic. It goes through different styles, different vibes, different musicians coming in and out, different colours. I think, you know, the influence of all the artists that I like, they always have plenty of colour in their albums. You know, I was listening to Prefab Sprout the other day, and the amount of colours that come and go on Jordan, the Comeback, you know, it's incredible. And you can get away with it if it's done under the umbrella of the same lead voices and the same kind of vibe. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's possible to be cohesive and being as random as you like if certain elements keep it rooted, which is usually the voices. You know, Joe Nye and Nick Allen, they keep it rooted, so you know it's always Littlemen. You know, whether there's a sitar on it or a fart whistle or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter what comes in, or a 60-piece orchestra, it doesn't matter. If the voices are there, it keeps the character. So there you go. Check it out. I Do What I Want is out. It's out and about, and there'll be physical copies. Go to the Littlemen Facebook and you can send him a private message. And also on Instagram as well, just send him a DM and say, Nick, I'd like a copy of the album, and he'll tell you how to get a physical copy. But yeah, proud of this. Check it out. Good record. The next time you're in the car and you're streaming music, as we all do, well, I don't, but some people do, then give it a listen. So thanks, guys. Thanks for checking it out. Quite a long one, this one, nearly half an hour. Woo, but a lot to go through. And as ever, if you're interested in me helping you arrange your music or produce your music, and you like what you hear from the Littlemen, and you want to give me a shout, then do so. And I'm working with a jazz singer on a new album, so it doesn't have to be pop or contemporary music like that. It could be any style. And I've been talking to a few other bands as well, so a bit more grungy and heavy. So it's not all kind of perfect pop either. All right. To be fair, Littlemen's not perfect pop either. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Diversity is key. So have a groovy Tuesday. Have a good few days, and I'll probably see you again on Friday with another video, and I'll talk about the quartet and what's happening with Crimson and all the other stuff that should have been out by now, but there are good reasons why they haven't been. So anyway, take care, guys, and I'll see you then. Bye.